Hey there, welcome to Clearing Conversations. I am Evelyn Rose. This is another one of my Witchy Tarot Q&A AMA sessions. Um, for those of you who have not been part of these before, these questions are usually things dealing with anything tarot, anything modern witchcraft, spirituality in general, things of those nature. Uh, for the most part, I do have questions prepared ahead of time that come from people who have sent me emails, reached out on social, things of that nature. I will go through and answer some of those. However, I always prioritize any questions that are in the chat. Um, so at any time, you can pop questions into the chat to get my attention. Um, and then it should be, my chat looks a little different today, so that's kind of worrying me. So if anybody does reach out to the chat and I seem to be ignoring you, then that just means something is going wrong with my chat. Um, there's nothing here suggesting that it's not working, but it looks different than it normally does, so that always gives me pause. This is the joys of not being a video person and yet being in charge of all of the video tech dynamics. If you've never done any sort of live streaming experiences, I definitely suggest you give it a try, if only to know what kinds of nonsense ensues. All right. So, again, if at any point you have questions, just pop them in the chat. I'm going to get started. Oh, no, sorry. Update before I get started. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Um, so typically at the start of these videos, I do give a little brief update on something that's going on. And this one is highly relevant to the up, and here comes the cat to get loves because I'm sitting at the computer. So you might see parts of her as she gets into the way of the video. Um, so directly relevant to these live streams, these Saturday AMA sessions that take place 5 p.m. Eastern time. Unfortunately, as I get into this busy season, this time frame is not going to work very well. It's not so much that I can't do them as it is that I will be exhausted and the quality will be so terrible. And it's kind of one of those, me forcing myself to do it is going to make me not want to keep doing it. So before we get my like squirrel brained ADHD burnt out, can't do it anymore, like just I hate this and I'm never doing it again kind of reaction, which if anybody has ever experienced that from me in the past knows how rough that can be. And demotivating for everyone, not just myself. Um I don't want that to see that happen with these Q&A and AMA sessions. Um Despite the fact that I still do not particularly care for being in front of a camera. Um I've actually kind of enjoyed being able to, prattle on about all the nerdy things I love so much. Um, so by all means, I want to hear back some suggestions from you guys in terms of days, times that work better. Just about every platform I could think of that has the ability to add a poll, I have added some variation of a poll related to these live streams. So we can either move the clearing conversations to a different day or time. We can let go of clearing conversations entirely and just have the lunar lunch break, which is the Monday at 1 p.m. Currently, it's only a 30-minute session, but I can stretch that out to 60 minutes or 90 minutes and just have the one weekly session. We can also have just a one weekly session that's on a different day and time altogether. And so, or even just get rid of the live streams and just do the pre-recorded videos. If you haven't seen those, I did start that a couple weeks back. I think I just dropped the second video for the moment of empowerment, going over some basic occult terms that come up a lot. So give that a check over. If you prefer the recorded over the live stream, we could do that too. Goodness knows I can handle the recorded slightly better than I can the live experiences, because when things go glitchy wrong, I have no idea what to do. My brain scrambles. I never know how the replay seems to be nowhere near as scrambled as what my brain feels like in the moment. Um, Little transparency there for anybody who's seen my moments of chaos that erupts, typically behind the cloth here, or my cat up at the desk who is still sitting here like, why are you not petting me? Um, She was for those of you who see me on Blue Sky, you may have seen I posted a whole bunch of pictures of her. They're technically not new pictures, or I think only one is relatively new. The others are all kind of older. Um, some of them from places I don't even live at anymore. Um, but she, yeah, I definitely had the Spider-Man theme song stuck in my head. Um, and so the captions on the pictures, the alt text are will read kind of a little bit like Batman kind of thing going on. Just somewhere between Spider-Man and Batman. There's my cat. Don't know why. It was a nerdy Saturday. Anyway, I digress. I got far away from what I was talking about, which again are these polls. So please make sure, if you're on YouTube or Twitch, you'll find there's a poll set up on the channel's profile posts. You'll see a quiz there. I think I've also posted on Nextdoor, LinkedIn. I feel like 2 or 3 other places that I can't think of at the moment. I was very sad and disappointed to find out that Blue Sky does not allow polling. Oh, the Discord, the Messages in the Moonlight Discord channel has the poll up there. So please make sure wherever you see the poll, just add your 2 cents. So far, I think I just posted these, I think, yesterday, and I've only gotten a couple responses so far. So feel free when you see one of those polls, just answer, just give me an honest answer. Even if you don't care, just whatever you think would be most helpful. I'm leaning toward keeping the Monday lunar lunch break and just lengthening it and just having that one. But again, there are other options as well that I'm exploring as possibilities. And of course, when we get back to the slow season, which is usually during the winter months, we can always look at bringing back more live streams or the Saturday live stream. But at least for this week and next week, I'm here on the Saturday that I would call lovely, but it is very cloudy and allegedly will be stormy at some point relatively soon-ish, probably right after this live stream is over, if not a little bit before. And then I will be here again next Saturday. And that one will be the last Clearing Conversations 5 p.m. Saturday time slot. So I'll announce then next Saturday what the actual results of all the polling is and give you an update as to what to expect with this live stream schedules. Okay, so now that I've prattled on about that for several minutes, let's go ahead and get into your questions. Let's see. Again, if you're just joining us, my chat looks suspiciously different, which has me worried. It's telling me it's all channels, so it might just be a software update that I didn't realize installed on me. But it does look a little different. So if you see me ignoring your messages, that's just my chat, and I will see them later and get back to you. Otherwise, please still drop in messages in the chat. I will tech support it later if necessary. But I'm going to just keep my fingers crossed and trust that it's working. So at any point in time, if you need me to slow down, speed up, quit prattling on, or if you're like, hey, that made no sense, can you explain this? By all means, and as well as just any questions that you have today, just drop them in. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to take a look at the questions I already had. Oh, so many questions. Okay. My list is finally getting a little shorter because I have kind of consolidated based on some similar questions, but there's still quite a few of them. I liked this question. This is more, I'm assuming, witchcraft or spirituality specific, so not tarot specific. So what is the difference between a spell, a ritual, and a prayer? And I love this question because depending on who you ask, you will get a bunch of different answers. So I'm going to do my best to give you a bunch of different answers from one person just to make it fun. So of course, prayer is that thing that most people know. That's the, whatever way it looks to you, but it might involve like the hand clasp and the, oh my goodness, I'm petitioning, right? I am petitioning to a higher power, somebody, and asking a thing or having a dialogue with them or honoring or I'm trying to think of some other words along that line. I hate to use the word worship because prayer and worship I don't necessarily see as the same thing, although you can worship and pray. They're interrelated, but they're not synonymous. So prayer is more of like a petition, right? Um, or a conversation. When we start getting into ritual can range from simple rituals. Those are like those mini rituals, right? Those micro habits I've talked about before. So that could be the lighting a candle and taking a deep breath and maybe saying an affirmation. It's like, okay, that is a simple ritual. A ritual could even be you wake up in the morning and you start the coffee pot and then you pour the coffee and then you add the creamer or um, the sugar or whatever it is that you add to your coffee. That can be a ritual. That is a morning ritual, right? Um, it's also a routine, but it can be a ritual depending on how you go about it. And so ritual can range from super simple or to the more elaborate. This is where we get, especially in deeper religious and spiritual practices, rituals tend to be all out. So, for example, in the typical neo-pagan Wiccan flavored ritual, we've got circle casting, we've got all the tools laid out, we've got invocations and evocations of various spirits and entities. We've got, some sort of uh, various elements that can involve like a single person or a group of people doing various functions, whether that's celebrating things like honoring the ancestors or celebrating the fertility of the earth, like we've seen with a lot of Beltane rituals over the last week and some this weekend in some spots, I think down in that might have actually been today or will be today. I think there's still some Beltane celebrations going on here in Delaware. Um, and so those are examples of rituals. They get a little bit more, they range from super simple rituals to the more complex and elaborate. And they're usually more about kind of bridging that spirituality into like grounding it into reality, right? Whereas when we get into spell work, we get into trying to manifest change. The spell can be super simple short. It can be super complex and raise a whole ton of energy. It can be solo, it can be group, it can just like ritual can vary in these ways, so can a spell. The difference with a spell is that it's all about raising that energy and toward an intention to manifest some sort of change within our reality. That is where spell and ritual really differ from one another. Even though they can look and sound very similar, especially within certain traditions, when we're using those terms, that's the difference. A ritual is usually a little bit more bringing reality, merging reality, um, honoring, worshiping, um, uh, those kinds of things where or even just a routine to make things a little less mundane, if you will. But the spell is like, I want to change this thing, I want this outcome to happen, and so it's not just setting the intention, it's raising the energy to make that and here comes the cat, she had to bump the camera. um she got bored of the window that quickly. Like I said, it is dreary out there. Nice and warm but dreary. And so a spell is more about that making, changing reality in some way. Ritual doesn't necessarily have to change reality. That's simply recognizing reality. It could be merging realities, um, but it's not about changing it in the way that spells are. And then again, prayer is more petitioning or conversing, usually with I would say higher power or divinity. You may say goddess, you may say God, you might say angels, you may say saints. Um, Sometimes can even be ancestors, departed loved ones. So who or what you pray to can vary, but what makes it a prayer is that it is a petition or conversation in some way. Um, so when it comes to petitioning, it's not necessarily you raising that energy like with the spell work. It's more of, hey, I would really love this outcome. If you think you could help me with that, because that would be great. This would definitely be the Jesus take the wheel kind of thing. That would definitely be more of a prayer than a spell, right? Um, so hopefully that helped kind of really solidify those differences between those three words. They can when we get oversimplified and super broad with it, they're all basically the same thing, but they do have nuance as you get deeper down into the weeds, if you will. But they're going to be mm, the intention behind them, what the actual energy or intent behind them is a little different. And they can again range from super simple to uber complex. Um, so hopefully that helped to answer your question. Of course, if it did not, or if you need me to clarify, or if I missed the mark a little bit and you want me to talk on a specific with any specific traditions and things of that nature, please reach out. Let me know so I can clarify or point you in the right direction if it's beyond my own. If it's a specific tradition that is beyond my own knowledge and experiences, I'll be happy to point you where you need to go for that. Um, Taking a look at the chat before I get into another question. I am not seeing anything. Again, if you're typing things into the chat and I'm just not seeing it, please forgive me. I will fix it later. And otherwise, still keep popping it into the chat anyway, because I will be able to see it before I close out the software. Even when the stream ends, I still see anything in the chat. I am trusting that it's showing me all of the chats because it's telling me it is. It just looks different. So that's definitely making me nervous today. I will probably repeat that about 5 more times before this session ends. So I apologize if you're watching the replay and this is really repetitive, because anybody who's watched my replays knows I don't edit these. I just, what's there is there, what you get is what you get. I do apologize. It's not always pretty. All right. Again, I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at my list and see if I have more questions. Ooh, okay. This one is a little bit of a tougher one. Hmm. I don't know that I can necessarily do this question 100% justice within this kind of AMA format, but I'm definitely going to answer it with some cautions and encouragement. Okay, so what is shadow work and how do I start? So shadow work, typically when we're talking about shadow work, we're talking about the shadow like in like Jungian psychology. So Carl Jung really kind of looked at universal um, uh, archetypes, if you will. So he came up with these ideas of psychological archetypes. And so they were different parts of our psyche. So he had worked previously with Sigmund Freud, who, of course, he talked about the id, the ego, the superego. And Carl Jung kind of took that further and he broke it into these major archetypes that we see across spiritual religious traditions that were available to him at that time, that still proved to be pretty universal. Even if we might call it something different within specific cultures, the themes that he based these archetypes off of were universal to human experience, which, as a psychologist, that's kind of what his job was. So within that psychoanalytic psychology, we see these ideas of the shadow, and it's that part of our psyche that we don't look at. It's that part of us that we kind of fill us with shame, disgust, rage, denial. Like we don't want to see it. We don't want to look at it. It scares us. It's ugly. We don't want to be associated with it. And what's fascinating is the things within our shadows might be something that somebody else within them, that's the part of their psyche that they are proud of, or that they like or that they enjoy. What makes it shadow to the individual is that that individual is that thing that they don't want to look at. Is that thing they try to keep in the dark, that they push down into the subconscious and the unconscious. They don't want to see it. So a lot of times when we talk about shadow work, we're talking about coming to terms with those parts of ourselves, not looking at them that way, processing our feelings. So that disgust, that shame, that guilt, and really kind of starting to be okay again with those parts of ourselves, or be okay with them, period, if we never were. Um, Contrary to Freudian beliefs, we are not necessarily inherently shameful of things. We are taught to be ashamed of them, but there are some things that just naturally we're just uncomfortable with. You see this, anybody who's had multiple children, on the topic of things like nudity, you get the ones that when they're young, you know, very, very young. You get some that are just like, oh, you know what? I don't need clothes. And then you have the others that are just like, oh my gosh, why am I naked? Give me clothes. And they're not picking it up from anywhere because they haven't had that opportunity to pick that up. They just naturally are that way. So contrary to Freudian beliefs, not everything was taught. Some things we just naturally are that way. And so sometimes shadow work involves coming to terms with those parts of ourselves or those experiences that we just didn't like in the first place, and that was just we were born like this, right? It is part of who we are, but we don't want to admit that it's part of who we are, right? We hide from it. So that's why we call it the shadows, because it's those parts of us that are in our shadow. We don't look at our shadow, right? We just want you to see the sun, what's there, the ego. Okay. All right. So shadow work, getting started with it. um, Obviously, if you can't tell just from my like my mini deep dive there into where the term even comes from, this is where you need to tap the therapist, you need to tap the psychologist, you need to tap the psychiatrist. Like you need to see a professional if you want to get into shadow work. Um, I hesitate to say social worker. I definitely hesitate to say coach, because that term is so widely used right now, and the quality of some of those coaching programs out there, it's not necessarily the coach's fault. They think they know better, but they don't. And that's not necessarily them. It's because somebody convinced them that all they needed was a certain training, and that training was, we'll call subpar at best. Um, Not assigning any blame there at all. But again, there are some fabulous coaches out there. There are some fabulous social workers out there, depending on their specific. Social work can range very widely. So, depending on what type of social worker they are and what their particular thing is, shadow work may or may not be in their ball house. Whereas a therapist is trained to help you with this stuff. A psychiatrist and a psychologist, 100%, that is their job, is to help you with this stuff. Um, so if you're really serious and you really do want to get into doing shadow work, you want to have at least one somebody that is part of your mental health wellness. That doc in your life for your, specifically for your psychological well-being. Um, and I say this because shadow work is not something that you go into lightly. Is there some stuff you can do surface level? Yes. Is Are there ways to kinda ease into it and be okay? Yes. But if you're really wanting to do your shadow work, really get into that, it does require therapy. It does require somebody who can sit there and be on call essentially and catch you when you're going through the muck of it. It can get very rough. Um, and I say this as somebody who could be very headstrong. Whether you want to blame that on my Sagittarius rising or you want to blame that on my Taurus moon. I could be a little headstrong and think like, oh no, I could do that. Let me try it. It's not as bad as they think. And I could tell you right now, when it comes to matters of shadow work and thinking you've got it, you don't. They will inevitably come up, and you want to make sure you have strong supports around you. So even if you're just doing lighter shadow work, like some of the stuff you find in like self-help books and things of that nature, um, if you are doing like kind of that lighter level on your own type stuff, you still want to make sure you have a strong support network with you, who can be there for you, whether that's through the community. So whether that's, through a local church or community social services, or even just strong family or friend networks that you can call them at 3 o'clock in the morning while you're feeling like you're absolutely gone crazy and you just need somebody to kind of hold you and hold space for you in that moment, and who you can trust to do that, um, then yes, you can do that without the therapist and without the psychiatrist and all that. But I still highly, highly recommend, before you dive into beyond skimming the surface, you want to have a therapist you can trust, who has your back and that you are working with as you work through that, because it really truly does make a difference, and that difference can be extremely catastrophic without the supports in place. So please, please, please make sure if you're looking to doing shadow work, please actually have somebody there with you. I, of course, am one of those simultaneously, as I give all these warnings and precautions, I simultaneously want to say, like, more people need to do their shadow work and more people need to be able to turn and look in the mirror, and do the inner work before they keep saying all the things outside. Especially if you've ever gone into the comments on social media, pick a social media platform, pick a post, go into those comments, take a quick glance around. And it's like, you will spot the people who I'm referring to, that where it's like, please just look in the mirror just for 2 seconds. And that in itself is kind of a lighter level shadow work that can be done without the full on therapy. But you definitely, if you really want to get started with that, I definitely say have a support network in place before you do so, because it will be rough. Um, it's called a shadow for a reason. All right, so hopefully that helped to answer your question. I know that was definitely an oversimplification. I know that it was not necessarily probably what the kind of answer you were looking for. Um, but if you do have questions, if you do need additional support, please reach back out to me, um, and I will help you find something. I would rather go through the trouble of finding you safe, reliable, supportive resources to get you started than you going out and diving into that without any support. Um, it's definitely something where you need a net underneath you before you make that jump. Um, all right. So, looking again at the chat, I still don't see anything in the chat. Again, if you're just joining, please feel free to drop any questions, concerns, or requests for me to slow down or add clarifiers into the chat, and I'll be happy to answer that. In the meantime, I'm answering questions that have been asked ahead of time through email, through social, some face-to-face questions that pop up. Just make sure to, again, drop your questions in the chat anytime. I always prioritize the chat if I see anything there. Let's see, where are we at on time? We're about roughly halfway point. So we still have time for a few more questions. All right, let's see. Do, 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 do. Okay, let's see if I can answer this one. Okay, so I love this question because it comes up so much. There's so many blog articles. There are so many, if you're into physical products, there's kits for it with instruction guides. There are books, there are instruction guides, there's videos, there's courses, there's mini courses, there's, oh my goodness, so many different things on this topic. And it's, how do I use crystals and do I need to cleanse them? So there are many different ways to use crystals. Of course, you could go full on aesthetics and then it's just make things pretty. Getting a little irreverent there. For if you're talking more in terms of trying to use it energetically, um, a lot of it is learning what these crystals mean. So this is where, if you've read my blog post where I talk about the placebo effect, what we see a lot with crystals, this falls under that placebo effect. So everything I say is one of those, you need to go out and you need to discover for yourself how you use those crystals, what works best for you in terms of cleansing them, power charging them, all of that stuff. Because if I tell you to do a thing and you go, that sounds silly and I don't like that, then when you need that crystal for something, based on studies we have seen, then it's not going to do you much good. But if you come across something, you're like, ooh, that sounds like a great idea, I want to try that. Ooh, I really, really do, when I hold this stone, feel this certain kind of way. And when I put it out into the moonlight, I feel like it's getting stronger. When I run it under cool water, I feel like it's letting go of all the negativity. Then that will help you when you need that crystal to help you. So crystals work through the power of belief. through connection. So the best way to use crystals isn't to just buy some random kit and like hope and pray that the crystals that are in that kit are ones that you like. You want to find crystals where something about it is calling to you. Like you keep getting dragged to the same part of the shop and you realize there's a crystal there and you hold it in your hand and it makes you feel a certain kind of way. What does it make you feel? Okay, pull out one of those books, one of those guides, one of those cheat sheets. Pull those out. Take a look. What does it say about that particular kind of stone? If you're feeling like, man, I feel charged up and I feel like just like I can do anything, and then you look up and this stone is about strength, is associated with strengthening and empowerment and passion and energy, then it's like, okay, there you go. You connect with that stone. That is a stone for you to use for those purposes. Um, Likewise, you might have a stone where you put that sucker in your hand and you're just like, oh, I feel the weight come off my shoulders just holding this thing. Um, Sometimes I get that from a stone that I put in my hand. Sometimes I get that just from sitting on a big old boulder that's like in a park somewhere. Where whatever kind of stone it is, then that is that association for you. That would be that grounding stone that helps you release that energy. Um, a lot of times, a common one, and of course, I have a piece here, is a good old piece of our black tourmaline. And it's literally like you feel it, and like there's something about that weightiness to it. So that would be that physical property. Okay. So it's got a little bit of a weight to it. It's a little heavier than some other stones. For example, if I had a piece of like onyx or jet, like, and I also black stones, and I put a similar sized piece into one hand, and I have this sucker in the other hand, this one's going to be a little heavier, right? And one of the fascinating things is black tourmaline is associated with that kind of drawing that negative energy out and kind of helping to ground energy. Um, and so it's protective in that kind of way. So if you're holding a piece of black tourmaline and you're feeling that kind of way, then that works for you and that's how you use it. That's, you can wear it, you can hold it, you can position it in the room, you can look into doing crystal grids. But the most important thing is that it resonates for you, because no two stones are necessarily going to resonate the same way. I have had pieces, like I like this little piece of black tourmaline, that's why I keep it right here. But I have had other pieces of black tourmaline where I'm just like, this thing just feels like a dud. So again, what does that stone or that crystal make you feel? What does the general consensus say it typically should feel like? That doesn't mean that for you that that particular stone must mean those things. Um, but that it can give you some clues. If you naturally felt that way before you looked it up, then you could kind of bank on like, okay, yeah, this is why people say this, because many people are having the same experience. As far as cleansing them, again, you will have some resources that will give you like specific, like on this date, this time, this way, and like it must be done. And it's like crystals work through the power of belief. How you cleanse them is going to be dependent on what you believe. If sticking this piece of black tourmaline into a big old bowl of salt and I'm just like, I don't think that did anything, then that's not the method for me to use. However, if I put this black tourmaline in that big old bowl of salt and then I pull it back out later, I'm like, oh, it's like a shiny new stone all over again. Then that is what works. Typically, the most common ones that most people find are helpful is running under cold water. It doesn't always have to be cold. If you're like me and you have sensitivities, it doesn't have to be like freezing cold, but just like basic tap cold. Tends to be helpful running it through cool water. So think like a stream or a lake or things of that nature. Word of caution, if you're going to use a river, please do so from a distance, and you may want to invest in a net or something that you put it in and hold it out, because I do not want you falling into the river because you were trying to hold a stone to cleanse your stone. Okay, so please don't do that. Safety first, always safety first. But again, there's many, many other ways to do this. You can pass it um, if you've got incense, you can pass it through the smoke of the incense and let that smoke release the energy. You can pass it through a candle flame. Similarly, please don't burn your fingers. So if you might want to do it above, if you're a little if you don't have quite enough sensitivity to the heat, maybe do it a little above the flame. So there's many different ways you can do it. Setting it outside, in the sunlight, in the moonlight, in different types of rain. So I mentioned earlier, we might have a thunderstorm a little later. Like that's some good thunderstorm energy to cleanse and charge a crystal, right? If you can set it outside. Unfortunately, where I live, I do not have the ability to set my stones outside during a storm. They will be gone. But that is an option available to you. Again, I know I come across as a little irreverent at times because some of the things I say will kind of sound like I'm trying to be dismissive, but to the contrary, for those that crystal like who believe in crystals and have taken that time to develop a relationship with crystals and work with them and use them in their life, um and cleanse them and charge them, those who do that, those crystals really truly do have a positive effect. So please be sure that as you go and explore crystals, explore all of it. Take all those classes. Read all those books, watch all those videos, listen to all those podcasts. Um, Find the things that fit with you and that resonate for you. If it works, keep it. If it doesn't, let it go. This is one of those things where that is how it actually works. Is through that way. Now, of course, if I had more time than just this AMA session, I'd go a little deeper into, some, we'll call it philosophical and theoretical aspects. But on the most basic, simplest of answers, crystals work on the power of belief. Find what you believe. Okay. All right. Again, I apologize because I know I'm a little irreverent at times. And actually, I need to stop using that word. I got told the other day that that people don't actually use that word as much anymore. It's one of those pieces of vocabulary that seems to go out of style. But basically, it comes across as being dismissive, but not necessarily intended to be dismissive when it comes to things of a more religious or institutional value. So I do apologize that I can be that way at times. And just reach out, let me know if you would like some recommendations for resources to get you started. Again, just reach out, let me know, and I will be happy to either add those to the show notes or, if you're emailing me, I'll just send you a reply email. Speaking of, I probably will end up with a course on mini course of my own on crystals that is a common workshop request. So I may turn that one into one of my on demands. And then I'll start recommending that as well. Little bit of shameless self promotion there. Let's see. Okay. Again, if you're just joining, please be sure to pop any questions you have in the chat. If I say something, even if you think you might have just even if you think I may have already answered it and you just missed it because you came in a little late, you can still pop that in the chat, and I'm happy to repeat it. Sometimes repetition helps, so don't be afraid of having me repeat something. Half the time I reiterate many times to answer the same question, so it's just an extra reiteration is all. All right. Let's see. Hmm. I like this question. This is another one where I know with this format I'm not going to do it as much justice as this question really deserves. But as a short AMA, I'm more than happy to kind of dive into it. So, how do I protect my energy without getting paranoid or overly rigid? Um, Try not to take everything so seriously, I guess would be part of it. Remember, laughter and humor in itself is a form of protecting our energy. It helps to uplift us, lift our vibrations, and that in itself is a form of protection. So that's one way. Just stop taking everything so seriously. So here's where I have watched things shift and change a lot since I started in my own journeys um, into witchcraft and modern paganism and things of that kind of leaving the old Catholicism and my brief stint of visiting various different other Christian denominations. Around that time frame, this is something that I watched shift. It used to be very much like that, very, oh, everything is harm none. Nobody does anything negative. Nothing baneful ever happens. Negative energy is not a thing. We just do the positive. So there was a lot of that, and of course we made fun of all of it, um, rightfully so. Uh, while simultaneously, many of us, well, yes, we do like to focus on the positive. Yes, we do have an optimistic view of things. But there's also that realistic. Well, negative energy exists. If there's positive energy, then there has to be negative energy. That's just kind of basic science fundamentals. Um, and then if you know anything of basic human behaviors, there's some negative energy out there, whether it was intentional or unintentional. It's there. It exists. So we kind of, to balance those scales, there started to be lots and lots of discussion, and then books, and then courses, and all these things about protection magic and learning to protect our energy and preserve our energy. And these were absolutely necessary to kind of counterbalance that point of like, hey, this is part of this practice. You really need to stop neglecting this topic. We need this topic addressed within any learning experience in any spiritual practice, but especially within any sort of like occult, esoteric, witchcraft, spiritual practices. We definitely need to at least talk about protecting our energy. Um, but what ended up happening there was we kind of ended up with almost like the flip side of it, where everybody under the sun suddenly believed they were cursed, that somebody had jinxed them, that the world was out to get them, and then we get into that paranoia, right? So so we went from like, oh, there's no bad energy to, oh my God, the bad energy is everywhere and you can't escape it. And the truth is always somewhere in the middle. um, and so protecting our energy can range again from something as simple as trying to take life a little less seriously, learn to laugh, learn to breathe, experience joy even during terrible, awful, the world really sucks sometimes and humans can be the worst sometimes moments. Being able to still tap into joy, still being able to tap into humor and things that uplift us, finding enjoyment, finding those things that replenish our energy. All those things help to raise vibrations, which again can already protect your energy. That by itself is not going to cover everything, but it does cover a good chunk of where the negativity really can fester. A lot of times when it does come to things like curses, jinxes, all that stuff, cross conditions, we've done it to ourselves. It's our own negative internal cycles. It can be indirectly from other people because it's things that they said to us that kind of stuck with us, and we kind of began to embody like that negative thing that somebody somewhere said to us, or that experience and that terrible thing that happened, and then we kind of manifest this negative cycle into our lives. And so sometimes protecting our energy is doing that inner work and addressing that, challenging those negative thoughts. Um, if you're familiar with any psychology or therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, where you literally are identifying thought patterns that are impacting your feelings and your behaviors, and challenging them, modifying them. That work alone can do so much good to raise your vibration, get you out of that negative loop, and you'll start to see that what felt like curse or cross conditions kind of go away, right? Um, Other forms of protection can be more like talismans. It can be, um, I've seen everything from gargoyles to besoms or brooms to statues of saints and angels. There's so many different things you can do and use. So again, I know I'm not doing this full question justice. Um, but the main goal here was, you're saying, without getting paranoid or overly rigid, is as you look into and as you explore, as you study these different protective practices and suggestions and rituals and spells and all the things, as you're exploring that, the biggest thing is to not assume that you are all the worst possible case scenarios. Because can there be a worst case scenario? Yeah. Could you be a victim of that worst case scenario? Sure. Are you highly likely to be that one person? Probably not, right? Um, it's still possible. I'm not saying you're not, but also just being able to challenge that thought of like, am I really being cursed by everybody right now? Is the world really out to get me right now? Did so and so the other day drop a thing and like now they have like doomed me for all the rest of my life? Like, did that really happen? So just challenging that is going to help you fight back any sort of like paranoia or getting like so like, oh my gosh. It's kind of like stepping outside. You've got to go outside into the world, right? And I think is it possible that the neighbor who's out there who is smiling is likely to, have an actual, negative thought or have some super secret that they're holding on to that is negative? Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely that they have murderous intent against you just because they happen to be walking down the street and you just happen to come out of your door at the time that they were walking down the street? Probably not. Chances, statistically speaking, are extremely low that that's the case. And it's the same thing when it comes to magical and spiritual things. It's this energy. It's not the likelihood is not high, even if the possibility still exists. Um, I hope that made sense. I got a little into the weeds there. But again, the biggest thing is laugh. Don't take it too seriously. Do the things. If you don't do the things, don't panic. Um, just do what you can to raise your energy, protect yourself, protect your home, protect your loved ones, protect your community. So expand those intentions for protection out beyond just the you. That's another way to keep you from getting rigid in it. Because when we start to be very me focused, we forget that like a lot of that energy, negative energy, again, is self perpetuating. So if we expand that intention for protection out beyond just ourselves, that's another way to kind of help keep us from getting too rigid. Um, it also, I'm very service oriented, so that might just be a bias of mine. Get a little community focus in there because we all need a little protection at times, right? Hopefully that kind of helped answer your question. I may have taken it in a direction that you didn't quite want me to go into. And if that's the case, again, reach out to me, let me know. I'm happy to readdress it, give you more resources, anything you need. I can always bring it up again in a future AMA session. Um, okay. I'm gonna move on. Okay. Chat's still looking a little quiet. I'm gonna go ahead and answer one more of my prepared questions. If any questions come into the chat, I will also answer that. Um, but I think I'm only gonna do one more of the prepared questions for this session. All right, let's take a look. I technically answered this one before. I want to branch out a little bit. Hmm. There's so many good questions. This is the Pisces tendency right there, that indecisiveness they talk about. It's not that I can't decide. It's that I really want to know that I feel good about my decision. And each of these questions kind of hit on a different domain, but you know what? I haven't done a tarot question in this session, so let's make it a tarot question. All right, let's do this one. All right. So, what does ethical tarot look like? And what about when I'm reading for my friends versus if I'm reading on reading versus online audiences. So, what about when I'm reading for friends versus online audiences? There we go. Okay. All right. So, ethical tarot is basically any kind of ethics. So don't doom and gloom. But on the flip side, don't avoid any negative so much as to be misleading. So the idea is to be open and honest about what you're seeing. But definitely don't doom and gloom it. Don't just come out. So I've talked before about like trauma informed tarot, and whether you're talking about tarot or anything, when we're talking about trauma informed, we're talking about having that awareness that the way we say things, not just verbally, right? Like our tone, our volume, our body language, all of that, facial expressions, all of that can impact a person who may have endured traumas, and any level of trauma, mind you, not just the severe traumas. Though typically, when we're talking about trauma informed, that's usually the segment of our communities that we're most concerned about. But even more minor types of traumas can similarly um, have a negative psychological impact on somebody if we are too I don't necessarily want to say brazen, but if we are too quick to jump in and just say whatever without any care or concern about the person in front of us and what they may or may not have been through. And so when we're talking about ethical tarot, like that's kind of what we're talking about. We want to be honest, we want to be transparent, but we don't want to be so blatantly and roughly honest and open with things that we aren't taking the time to consider that person and what they've been through. Now, with our friends, what's really nice about that is that they, you more than likely will know at least some of those trigger points that they might have to be able to navigate those conversations a little better. Whereas if you're reading for strangers online, then you're not necessarily going to know. Also, with online, there's also that aspect of having to deal with matters of privacy. It's part of why I don't necessarily like to do a live streamed version of tarot readings. Not that I never do, just they are always going to be of a much lighter um uh lighter type of reading than I would if I were doing a private one-on-one session with that same individual. Um whether they were known to me or a stranger to me. Like I'm going to take my time in a private setting and go much deeper with more care. Whereas in the online setting, the care is in keeping it light, keeping it um, where we aren't invading privacy in front of people, right? We're not going to call people out. I try to do this. Anybody who's ever had me do a reading for them, like in an event setting, and then also in a one on one private setting, the way I talk to them in that private setting is very different than how I do at that event setting. And it can be subtly different. Like I'm still me. I'm still talking the way I'm talking. I'm still going to do the reading the way I'm going to do the reading. But how deeply I talk about something, how the degree to which I kind of push a little bit and prod a little bit is different based on the amount of privacy that I can have available to them. So those are other parts of that ethical consideration. Um, but a lot of times, again, the ethical is just finding that balance. And this is why I get really, really upset with not just because of my experience with tarot, but also because of my experience in medicine and in psychology. My background experiences in like education in these fields, um, and working with people and seeing how delicate of a balance it is, and it differs from person to person. It's not a one size fits all. This is why anybody who works in medicine, anybody who works in psychiatry or mental health, anybody who works in any adjacent fields, like we undergo regular training, multiple workshops, multiple college courses, multiple professional development. Um, for my teachers out there, if I made you shudder, I sorry. Um, there's a reason why that training is ongoing and why, as the research comes up, we dive in and we do it. Even if we are ourselves burnt out from offering these services, we still will engage in those trainings because we know that every person we meet is a little different and we need to be better at it if we're going to be able to help them the way that they truly need help. And so this is why I get really like, oh my God, don't do it. For those who pick up a book on tarot and then are, charging people online like a week or two later. Like, please don't do that. Please don't do that because this is that kind of stuff where we get into the ethics of it. Um, whether you're charging for these readings or you're offering them for free, these are the ethics of tarot. This is what makes the difference between unethical and ethical, is that being knowledgeable of people, not taking advantage of them, not being manipulative, but being supportive, being of service. Again, some readers like myself do make this is a professional thing that we do. We do offer these services professionally, but um, and some people that I know, they just will never ever charge for a reading. It's just part of their view on things. They have other things that they charge for, whether that's as an employee earning a paycheck, or offering as a business owner, offering other products or services. But they'll do their readings for free. It's different for every reader. So there's no right or wrong about charging or not charging, or how much to charge, but it's in how you handle talking with people, how you handle their sensitive information. Um, and I'm not talking about sensitive information in the HIPAA kind of way of, like, or even in just the personal, like, identifiers kind of thing. I'm talking like that stuff that they might not have even told anybody else, or that the only people who know these things about them have known them for decades. Like, and when you're doing tarot, sometimes that information comes up and they're not expecting it to come up, but it comes up. Um, and so as a reader, that is part of the ethics, is being able to be aware in the moment when that has happened. Be ready. Do you need to offer them tissues? Do you need to say, screw the sign up list, I'm here with you? Do you need me to call somebody? Um, so some of it is like that. It can get really deep, it can get really simple, and I'm just glanced at the time and I'm realizing that I'm going really in depth on this. Hopefully that helped to answer your question. Again, this is another question where I could spend an entire hour talking on just this topic alone. Um, and actually sounds like another thing that I would make a workshop for. So now in one AMA session, I already have like 2 workshop ideas that need to become on demand and not just ones I offer locally. Um, you guys keep me on my toes, keep me busy. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and end it there. Again, if you have something you want to pop in the chat real quick, either for me to address on the next one, I'm just gonna go ahead and go over some information. Um, if you weren't here at the beginning of the stream, I mentioned that the Saturday sessions are gonna be going away, um, at least during my busy season. So usually spring, summer, fall are usually my chaotic schedules of all the things. And my calendar's a lot more full of the kinds of things where, like, I need these times for that, for other stuff. Um, so while I thought the Saturday 5 p.m. would work, unfortunately, the reality is if I keep it at 5 p.m. on a Saturday, I'm gonna come in so drained. I'm eventually gonna get resentful. We are not gonna have a fun time. The video replays are gonna be awful. So I think it's just better for everyone if we move the times. So what I am thinking about doing is changing the Monday live stream, which is the 1 p.m., and moving that toward the making that longer and having that be just a one weekly session. That's what I personally am leaning toward. But I have popped quizzes, polls all over the place, except for Blue Sky. Blue Sky doesn't have polls. We should really complain about that. I feel like polls would be a really fun feature for Blue Sky. It will definitely get abused, but we should totally do it. It would be so much fun. Anyway, I digress. There is so if you're on YouTube or Twitch right now, you should be able to go to the channel and find like a little poll or quiz thing there that has options. I have it on the Messages in the Moonlight Discord. I think I put it on the Nextdoor app, LinkedIn. What else? Let me put polls up. Um, there's definitely one more, and I think I said at the beginning of this. So if you watch the replay, you'll catch it. Anyway, point is, anywhere that I could think of that allows me to do polls, I added the polls. They're worded a little bit differently depending on the platform because of limitations. But basically, the idea is I can have this hour-long AMA session, just move it to a different day and time. I could just have the Monday lunar lunch break and make that longer and just have that for the whole week. Um, we could have a longer session that is on a different day and time, some point in the week, and still just have the one. Or we can just say no more live streams, at least during this busy season, and pick it back up later. And in the meantime, just stick with pre-recorded videos like my a moment of empowerment videos. So those are just some options. So anyway, point is, find one of those, share your feedback. Even if you're kind of like, I don't really care one way or another, just pick a thing. It's just that helps me solidify decisions before I make any big changes or announcements. We will have one more Saturday next Saturday, and I'll let you know what's been decided and updates related to it then. Um, on that note, I'm going to switch us into the outro. Do, 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 do. Oh, and of course I made my screen all small so I can't see it. Let me make that bigger on my end so I can see what you're seeing. Okay, so just some updates and reminders. Of course, become a moonbeam. Okay, my Starlight Circle is my monthly newsletter. I only send it out once a month. It should be coming out not this coming week, but the week of the 18th. It should come out that week for May. So it's only once a month. I try not to pester, like unless you're at the Light Weavers Clearing and you're signed up for courses and stuff like that. I think there's some automated emails related to that, but my Starlight Circle is a once a month. That's it. I'm not going to pester you more than that. So consider subscribing to that. I do have subscriber specials, exclusive content you won't see anywhere else, and I do that just for subscribers. Also, enroll in my Tarot 101 with Evylyn Rose. This is a 100% free mini workshop, and my my very typical irreverent approach to that metaphysical approach to the science and spirituality of tarot. So please check that out and see if that's for you. You can, of course, always explore my website. So I have the personal blog on the EvylynRose.com website. There's a Lightweavers Clearing that has all the on-demand videos, not videos, sorry, on-demand workshops, digital downloads, and those kinds of things. You'll also find there's the Sinker Sanctuary, which is my exclusive online learning community. You're welcome to join that. It's still in its earlier days, and the platform recently changed it up, so everybody's kind of a little quiet as we're trying to figure out how to navigate this new system. So you're welcome to come join us and bicker along with me about how that looks so we can complain to Thinkific together. And of course, messages in the moonlight. There were quite a lot of questions that came up today where you could definitely find more information about that addresses some of those questions on that website. By all means, check that out. All of these links are in the show notes below. You can also reach out to me on social media. So Blue Sky is where you'll most likely find me. LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, Alignable. If you're a business entrepreneur yourself, you can find me there. Of upcoming live streams, again, the lunar lunch breaks are Monday at 1 p.m. The clearing conversations, there's only one more Saturday at 5 p.m. next week, and that will be the last one of these. You can submit your questions ahead of time via email, social, or in person. Okay, and if you like this video, if it helped you in any way, whether you are here live with me or you are watching the replay at home, please remember to subscribe. It lets you know when I post any new content, whether it's one of these live streams or when it's, a pre-recorded thing. Also, like the video and comment on the video, even if all you do is just put a little smiley face in there. Doing this helps not just you update your algorithm so you can see what you like, but it also helps others find more videos like this that help them. So again, thank you so, so much for joining me today. I know I am rambly and I prattle on, so I appreciate you sticking it out with me. And as always, keep radiating hope into the world.